through the cherry pie. Did you get enough to eat? Great sandwiches. So some announcements. I'm sure you saw the email, but with sadness, Bob White passed away, I think Saturday morning. Either Friday or Saturday morning. Sharon called me in the afternoon, and he was walking out to the mailbox with his walker, and Bob is 93, but I just saw him 10 days ago, and he was mentally great, a little weaker, but walking out with his walker, and she saw him kind of stumbling and went out there. By the time she got out there, he was down, and she thought it was a heart attack. They weren't positive, but he didn't suffer. So Bob came to us from the east side of the state. He's been aligned for 55 years. I think he's been in our club for 15 years. They moved here, and didn't come to a lot of meetings once COVID hit, but he's a great guy, and we'll miss him. Sunday, what's any announcements? And talk about Sunday's activity.
Sunday, we want to see. Anybody wants to come? We've got chili, cornbread, and conversation, and a little bit of wine. If you come out to Fenn Valley, and Cheryl's taking reservations, I guess, and
10 more spots, 23.
okay, great. You can come, and there's a $10 fee. We'll have salad as well, once a salad. And you can get either 2 glasses of your choice of wine or a flight of wine, which is 7 different tastings. And lots of conversation and lots of, it's a nice setting, and we'd love to see you out there. So
1 to 4:30.
yeah, 1 to 4:30. And it's supposed to be great weather, so. And there's lots of, you can walk out in the vineyards too. I mean, there's a lot of snow over by us, but you get a kind of flavor for it, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
so if you want to
love
go,
to see you, okay?
get a hold of Cheryl and get a reservation. Eyeglasses, anything new on eyeglasses or anything you want to bring that up, Scott?
We're going to begin to open up. Work with the site for a program that Kathy Overman uses for the driving the people around. We're going to set that up so that you can sign up for different slots. We get different committee members who are going to be sponsored. Like this afternoon, I'm doing lensometer with my wife, Panzeri, and Ilaria usually comes. And they'll do lensometers, and we'll set up programs like that. So if someone's in charge for an hour or two, you can come out and either wash or do different things, but you can sign up for those things, keeping very small groups multiple times during the week. So look for that to come up in the next couple of weeks. Some kind of way to sign up and get back up and run the program again.
And you said that's in Sign Up Genius?
It will be, yes.
Okay, it will be. It's not there yet.
No.
So maybe we'll get an email sent out so people can know how to get on to Sign Up Genius. It works really well if you've never used it. Service project for the month, Sherry Evie will announce, we'll have this week on the February service project. Last month, who all got to help doing water filters? Okay, I still have blisters. It was phenomenal. Those water filters that we assembled are incredible. I think we did 1,250 water filters in the hour and a half that we were there. And you saw him the last meeting when he demonstrated those things. You basically run sewage through it. You can drink the water after it comes out. It's amazing. Tail twister. Let's let Jamie go.
Hello, everybody. Start with if you have your pen. I thought I was catching Rob Lally without a pen, but he's right down here on this. He's got it here and he's leaving early. I thought he might do that. I'm not sure if wearing it on your cuff doesn't qualify. Let him go. But it's like you're hiking. It's supposed to be broadcasting a little bit. But if you don't have your pen, a couple dollars would be nice. Not gonna look too hard. Happy Bucks, anybody? I will start it off. A couple weeks ago went out to Massachusetts, saw my son, my daughter-in-law,
our grandson, and I should say my pregnant daughter-in-law, who is due in the early part of May for twins. So, and we were working on the house, got some stuff done, trying to get it in a better place. So, it's up there for a few days. And general thing, if you've had the benefit and been able to take a little vacation or time, that you give a little bit to the Happy Buck Fund.
Happy Buck was down in Telpad for a couple of weeks, took money from Mr. Brady on the golf course,
That's why I
And-
have happy bucks.
and Mr. Cry too, so it was a big trip.
But you have any unhappy bucks?
We left Jeff Cry down there, so he didn't make me come.
That's a happy buck, right?
Yeah, that's a happy buck there.
Anybody else that, yes?
Yes, planning in advance, headed off to Key West. We're gonna bike from Key Largo to Key West.
Wow.
Yes, so we're doing glam. And I'm just named to 50 most influential this week. So 2 weeks, 16.
Are you gonna stop at any breweries along the way on that bike?
Yes.
Yes, good.
Yes.
There's a few. Made margaritas.
Okay, any other happy bucks? Good, yes. Brought my wife, Kevin. Very good.
She's looking to join the Lions.
Oh, very good. See, and we want to do the raffle now, or
It'll
you?
be a great time to do the raffle. Let's do that.
Okay.
We've got a great
Oh,
plan to get-
I didn't get a ticket yet. We'll go over here. Get that. Okay. We're gonna make it noticeably correct. Here is the white chip. The eye doctor saw it going in.
Can't see. How do you know?
Okay.
Sure.
And you get to pick the tickets to that, right? Well, that could be any
Put it
selection.
back.
Oh,
All
okay.
right.
And for the $5, last four digits, 0110.
Second week, second time in a row.
All right.
Wow.
And one more for half of the pot.
I didn't pick it then.
Thank you.
I want to use it, but I didn't pick it.
No, you got,
Oh.
you got.
I'm waiting to get that appointment.
I didn't buy a ticket, but I want to get it.
You know me. All right. I'll let you read it, so.
0108. Could be the same spot.
That'd be him.
I'm gonna have Cheryl pick it up.
No.
You can
Yeah.
walk square away. Now, the only way I can get it so he can't see is I gotta hold it up a little bit higher. He's blindfolded.
White. That is white.
I'm changing doctors.
It identifies as white.
Thank you, Jamie. And now I'd love to have Shelley come up here and introduce our great speakers today. Thank you.
All right, lucky. I know Mark Overland a couple months ago said, we need to get scientists in from our Van Andel Institute, and we have done that. So here we are. A couple of presentations, we'll call it tag. Kate Brillman, your philanthropy director with Van Andel Institute. Kate will be providing a few comments about why it's important to give and to give to BAI. So that will be instrumental. A super mission this institute has, and we're waiting for the cures every day. Ilaria Panzeri is a postdoctoral fellow in Andrew facility, that too, lab here at Van Andel, so she'll talk about that, and of course, she zones in on the Center for Epigenetics, epigenetic origins of heterogeneity and disease, and of course, doing great work here in the Americas. So without further ado, come on up, ladies, and talk about, Kate, we'll start with you, what the Good Institute does. Round of applause. It doesn't feel like it's on. Is it working? It didn't feel like it. Oh, now it is. Yeah, okay, great.
Well, I want to say thank you for having us today and commend you for all the amazing work you do out in the community. I have high regard for Alliance. My dad has been Alliance for a long time out there. So, my comments are going to be very brief and very easy to understand and not scientific at all. I'll leave that to Ilaria. But I just wanted to give a high level overview. The Van Andel Institute was established in 1986 by the Van Andel family. Their dream was really to impact human health for current generations and future generations. And you probably or may know that Jay Van Andel lived with Parkinson's for many, many years. And I believe he would be very, very pleased to see the progress that's been made in understanding that disease so much better and helping to impede the progress of that disease. So the Van Andel Institute focuses on cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's related dementias. And then we also have a team that's focused on metabolism and nutrition and how that plays into those diseases. So those are our focus areas, and Ilaria is going to talk more about her specific area. We're home to nearly 500 scientists, educators, and staff from 40 different countries are represented. So I know that's like nothing compared to the number of Lions organizations and countries represented, but we're really proud of what that brings to our West Michigan community. Like I said, we're committed to improving health and focused on Parkinson's, cancer, and Alzheimer's. VAI collaborates with institutions around the world. So we like to say we're an institute with and without walls. So a lot of our work is done with scientists that are collaborating all around England, India. And some of the things that we've discovered from that are things that we never would be able to do just within our West Michigan community. So we're really, really proud of that. One of the distinctions we just had was in 2021. So Clarivate is a highly cited research group that looks at who's getting published and who's leading the pack in that. And 5 of the Van Andel Institute scientists were in that list this last year. So we're really, really proud of that. And that kind of helps to acknowledge that our research is being recognized in peer reviews and peer publications. So we're really proud of that. You may not know that we also have a graduate school at the Van Andel Institute. So that's another area where we're really educating the future leaders. And then we also do quite a bit in K through 12 education. So if you have any students that want to go for the summer science camp, or even teachers that are doing more in their school that want to have some resources, those are things that we do at the Institute as well. At the very end, we'll have a slide about ways that you can learn more about what we're doing. We do a public lecture series, which is 4 times a year. Anyone can attend that now with Zoom, and it focuses on the research areas within the Institute. So I will turn it over to Ilaria, and happy to answer any questions you may have at the very end. All right, so good morning or afternoon or in between to everyone. As Kate mentioned, my name is Ilaria, and I'm originally from Italy, so my apologies for the accent. I'm doing my best. I'm here today to talk to you about what we are doing in the lab and what's specifically my project. So I like to think of what we are doing in the lab as a test for colors, for our true colors, and it will become more clear later on in my presentation. So biologically, what is it that defines all of us? So we can think about it as 3 main components that are interacting together. So we have the genes, of our genome, right? What we inherited from our parents, our father and our mother, the environment we live in, and epigenetics. And all these three are intermingled together, and during our life defines us what we are. So a way to think about epigenetics is through art. So if we think of our genes as our colors, then epigenetics are the brushes and styles that we use in order to get these colors into art or into what we are. So an example is here. So here, these artists wanted to depict sunflowers in a vase, right? They started from the same colors, same subject that they wanted to end up with. But still, you see, there are many different styles you can get towards depicting sunflowers. And basically, this is what epigenetics is doing. We're all starting from the same subset of genes or colors, but still we end up being very different, right? And this is true also if you look at the same artist. So the last two are from Van Gogh. So same artist, same kind of way of depicting, but still some differences, right? And this is happening because the artists live in a certain environment, interact with other artists, and this modifies their art, right? So it's not, even the art from an artist is not something that is constant during their life, but rather life is a constant change. We all start having the subset of genes, as I mentioned before. The environment changes us, and what is integrating this information is genetics. I don't know how many of you saw this movie. It's an old movie, and it's called Sliding Doors. And it tells about the story of this lady that ends up having to catch the underground in London, right? And at one moment in the movie, there are these sliding doors of the tube that close in front of her. So in one part of the story, she manages to catch the tube, that train. On the other part of the story, she doesn't. And at the end of the story, she ends up being two very different persons because of this single situation in life. What we think is happening is that we have many different sliding doors throughout our life. And depending on what's happening in that specific windows, we end up being very different persons. And this is not just a movie. Real life is indeed a constant change. So if you look at twins, twins are our ideal model as scientists, because specifically monozygotic, so identical twins, have the exact same genome at the very beginning. And oftentimes they are raised in a similar environment. So we can think about them as having the first part of the plot here, basically similar, if not identical. But still, they can develop in many different ways, both from their aspect, their features, their character. We all know that, right? And in the lab, we also really love this book from Martin Scholler. He's a photographer, and he took portraits of twins. And if you compare these portraits, you can really appreciate the subtle differences. And you can appreciate them even in young twins, right? That didn't experience so many different environments, stressors, diets, and so on and so forth during life. So this really tells us that very early in development, there is something we are not considering that pushes us towards different paths. And in the lab, we think that apart from features, characters that I mentioned before, this is really the origin of many traits, including diseases. And so we can end up being very distinct persons depending on the choices that we we're not fully aware of during our development. And this is just an example. It's the only really sciencey figure that I have. So on the left, you see a plot. The more the bar goes to the right, the more that specific trait is linked to genes. So height, for example, we know it's tightly linked to our genes. This means that if you take two identical twins that have the exact same genes, they are less likely to be different in terms of height. On the other plot, you see other examples of other traits, and I highlighted the ones that are specifically linked to cancer. So here the bar is red if it's linked to genetics, is green or pale green if it's linked to something else like environment. So you see there are some cancers like prostate cancer in which there is still a substantial genetic component, but it's up to 40%. This means that if we just consider prostate genes in prostate cancer patients, we miss 60% of the understanding of the disease. And this is even more clear if we go down the plot towards uterine or cervical cancer or leukemia, where we have really a huge component that is not driven by genetics. And so this is basically my focus of research, cancer. And what we really think is that cancer has a developmental origin. So if we take two twins, identical twins, born with the same genes, raised in the same environment, often they end up being different in their cancer susceptibility. There is an 80% chance that two identical twins will end up having one cancer and the other not, or one developing one cancer, a certain cancer type, and the other developing another one, right? So this tells you how much we are missing, and what I'm really focusing on is to understand what we are missing, to end up ultimately understand which type of cancers are susceptible to these differences and which other cancer types instead are similar, even in the same changing environment. So the overall final idea of the research is being able really to identify the true different colors that define our developmental trajectories, so how we develop during time in life, so that, now we are looking at patients like if we were basically all the same, respect to their previous life from the genetic point. So we treat them all the same, because we are totally unaware of this first part of the plot. But if we were able to understand their past epigenetic history, we would be able to stratify them according to their true colors, and ultimately being able to, first of all, identify cancer as it develops, because we know where to look at during their history. We know what's changing during their history. So everything could be, the entire medicine could be more personalized, and the approach could be even more targeted when we go into the cure. But we hope to be able, to catch cancer before and maybe even prevent it. So this is my lab, and nothing would be possible without them, particularly without my guy, who's this guy here, Andrew, that listened to my idea at first, and he recognized it's a very challenging idea, but nonetheless, he wanted to support me in this journey. And listed here are all the people in the lab, and here on the right, the students that I mentored just since I'm here in the Van Andel. And I'm really thankful to the Human Frontier Science Project who funded my project. And it's really specifically targeted for very challenging projects. So it's good to have those supports. And here I'm just listing some of the lab I'm collaborating with within Van Andel. So I honestly didn't know much about Van Andel before I joined, but here I discovered a wonderful community of science. No one is competing against each other. Everyone is really super supportive in helping you trying to reach your goal and understand what's going on behind your scientific question. Of course, we collaborate with, here I list just a couple of our main collaborators in the world, both in Canada and in Germany. And the Van Andel is also great because, it's also great because we have wonderful cores. So of course you can understand that behind what I showed you, there are tons of expertises that are needed, both technical and theoretical, and the cores are great because they provide us, as scientists, the support that we need every day. This speeds up incredibly our research because I don't have to learn everything that they do, of course. And also they have wonderful skills in what they're doing. So they are really extremely supportive. Yeah, that's it. And thank you very much for listening to me. And I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
How will you know when your project is complete?
That's a good question. So in science, it's never complete. You can always discover more, right? That's the nice thing of science. So at the moment, we have been already able to understand that some cancer types are more susceptible than others to this developmental origin. So this part of the project is almost complete. So we just need to validate it. What I want to do next is try to understand what's driving these differences, right? What are the players behind so that we can target with drugs, for example. So what's good in science is that it's never ending. So every single part of the project brings new questions, and so that we want to address. It's almost there.
Where do your students go after they're done with you?
That's a good question. So what I have mentioned about these students. So the first one was a German student that decided to come to Van Andel to do his research, his master thesis, and now he's in a German university, so he came back home. He went back home. Kristen is actually applying to the Van Andel grad school at the moment, so we hope to have her back as a grad student. And Warren, I believe he's applying also to some grad schools. He doesn't have an answer yet, but he's looking for grad schools too. Yeah. So normally they say in science. Yeah.
This isn't a question, it's more of a comment. When I was working in the schools, I had a student who was visually impaired, and she wanted to be a geneticist. And so I knew nothing about Van Andel Institute at the time. Never heard of it other than saw the sign. It was there. And I called, and I think it was Helga Torriello that said, come in. Allowed, I went with her, and they spent the day letting us talk with your staff and allowing her to shadow them. And I think they did such a wonderful service, because you think of it as a medical institute, but it's really, and I didn't know how to address the students' questions or needs, but what a wonderful opportunity for her. I applaud you for being able to be open to that. That was probably 20 years ago. So you've come, it's not here. I'm sure, but I just wanted to share what the institute does.
Yeah, it's a great environment.
Yes, in many ways.
Thank you for sharing that, because they oftentimes people do think we're the hospital and we're really focused on research and education. So, and I would offer that if any of you have students or individuals that are interested in learning more, please reach out. We'd be happy to host you for a visit.
This was a high school student going on to college, but I just didn't have any resource. I had no idea what to do and where to direct her. And
we have an amazing summer research program too for undergraduate students that come and work on our lab. That's funded by the Meyer Foundation, and it's a great program. So just mention that to if any of you have college students. And that's actually how we met Kristen. She came as a summer student. So she's amazing.
You mentioned your twins illustration of how environment affects the way that people develop disease orders. Is there anything to do with traditional choices of life or the expectations that you're looking backwards on traditional choices and the effect of those choices on your body, how it builds psychological?
Yeah, that's exactly the point. That's one of the features. So diet for sure impacts our life and for sure impacts our future disease susceptibility. So one of the things that we are doing, very exciting topic, is one of the things that we are doing is building a biobank of blood samples from screening so that we can actually trace back, look at the metabolites, so what from the diet comes into the blood, and trace back how these metabolites changed during time so that we know, you know, at a certain point, this metabolite come up. So probably these kids change something in their diet, for example, we can actually link it to the cancer development later on, because these are cancer patients. And so it's highly tied to that. We know that, for example, a high fat diet, it's kind of intuitive, right? A diet rich in fat can actually fuel cancer. We know that since ages. And it seems obvious, but we still don't know exactly how this happens, right? So, you know, we have some hints to many questions, but we don't have true answers. So these studies are important. So it's not what it's part of the lab, because currently we don't have the setting to do that, but that's an important part. Yes,
So I have more of a question for the Institute itself. In the areas that it's concentrated since it began in the 90s. What have they seen, or what has been successes through their trials, collaboration with other institutions, but also, I mean, like within cancer, Parkinson's, is there anything that can be said over 10, 20 years, there's been some successes?
One of the big discoveries was there's a connection between the appendix and Parkinson's disease that came from a researcher at Van Andel Institute. There's that link between those two things. We're not saying take your appendix out, but they're finding that they always thought Parkinson's started in the brain, but now there's connections to the gut. So one of the things they've discovered, and that was some of the reason why we established metabolism and nutrition. The other one is we've had quite a bit of success with pancreatic cancer. One of our researchers at the Institute is discovering a way to test for that sooner, because it's much harder. It's really a type of cancer that once you have it, it's pretty far along. So if they can do some things with biomarkers to find, yes, we think you might be someone that's likely to have this kind of cancer, and they're doing that in conjunction with some clinical trials. We do a lot like out in the community as well with partners. So those are two that come to mind. That one booklet on the back had a lot of the recent discoveries. It was called Innovation Unleashed. In the back of that one has more specifics.
I think I remember a few years ago, wasn't there something with not necessarily just the Institute here, but where they were able to break apart the Parkinson's gene, or whatever it is, the right terminology, cells, so that it was identified better. I thought there was something like that a few years ago that came as a result of course, research that was done through the Van Andel, but also interconnection with different.
That's why, one of those reasons why we cite our 5 researchers, the things that they publish in peer review, those other scientists use that information to help further their research too. So that could be what you're referring to.
But I think it had to be something with Parkinson's, identifying certain parts of it or whatever. A huge success.
Yeah, could have been the appendix.
It could have been.
Yeah. And if I can mention about cancer, there's the stand up cancer, for example, we are part of, that aims really at identifying new ways of targeting cancer using repurposed drugs. So drugs that we know about, that we know they work for other diseases, and they are repurposing it. So we know how they're working, we know their targets, but now they are trying to test it for cancer, for example. That's a huge success, I would say.
Kate, can you explain the Purple Community?
Yes, so the Purple Community is our grassroots event. So anyone out in the community can put an event together, and then the proceeds will go back to the Van Andel Institute. So some examples are we do like Griffin's game, some organizations will run a golf outing, schools will do some type of fundraising event at the school and give back the proceeds, and that it's all grassroots. We support if an organization or group wants to do something like that. Hope College always does one of their football games is their Purple Community game. Another example. That's what the bracelets are. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey, what, oh, the panel institute allowed find you to become the researcher there, you applying to the institute to try to get there. How does it look?
You mean original, how originally I've been attracted to the Van Andel?
Do you go and find the Van Andel, or does the Van Andel go and find?
Yeah, that's good. So in my specific case, it was basically I followed my boss from Germany to here, so that's how I knew about Van Andel. I think Van Andel attracts scientists throughout the world because of the big names here the institute has inside. So there are really huge, famous all over the world group leaders that are renowned in the cancer field, in the Parkinson field, and in the Alzheimer fields. Everyone knows about them in the scientific community, and everyone wants to work with them. And then, you know, once you visit, you really discover how this community, it's really working together for science. For science is great. It's not something that is easy to see from the outside, the second aspect, but it's really tremendously important.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Memento, emergency first aid kit from Lions. So thank you both.
very much, sir.
Yes. Thank you for taking the time to come. And teaching us about that secret place up on the hill. It's kind of like a big vault that sits there. You know, you can't get in.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should call it that. Okay. All right, so any other questions or comments or? Thank you for taking the time. Some of you we will see Sunday, and other than that, we will see you in 2 weeks. So thank you. Parking tickets if you need them. We're adjourned.
I see you.